Coming up, 3 strikes.
That's all I used to think about. We're in hell.
And he's out.
And realize, hey, I'm never going home. And I just...
Locked away for a low-level crime.
Life for nothing.
Now meet the crusader who set him free.
She said, Tate, you going home.
On today's 700 Club. Welcome to the 700 Club. Billions for vaccines and bigger checks for Americans. President-elect Joe Biden has proposed a major stimulus bill to help the economy recover from the coronavirus. The cost? Nearly $2 trillion.
The president-elect's plan includes $1,400 stimulus checks. Will Congress pass the bill? And if so, how soon? Ben Kennedy has the story from Washington.
Biden's plan aims to speed up vaccines and help those struggling during the pandemic.
And so tonight, I'd like to talk to you about our way forward. A 2-step plan of rescue and recovery. A 2-step plan to build a bridge to the other side of the crisis we face to a better, stronger, more secure America. Tonight, I'll lay out my first step.
Biden's plan calls for billions for vaccines and bigger stimulus checks for Americans. Under the plan, $400 billion would go towards fighting the pandemic, with the majority of the money being economic relief and aids for states and localities. Also included are $1,400 stimulus checks, on top of the $600 checks from the recent relief bill.
Our rescue plan also includes immediate relief to Americans hardest hit and most in need. We will finish the job of getting a total of $2,000 in cash relief to people who need it the most. The $600 already appropriated is simply not enough. You just have to choose between paying rent and putting food on the table.
Biden says this money is needed now more than ever, as the latest government figures Thursday showed more than 1 million people looking for unemployment assistance from the government.
Countless families and friends left behind with unrelenting grief and guilt, anger and frustration. And the emptiness felt by the loss of life is compounded by the loss of our way of life.
Mark Hamrick of Bankrate told CBN's Faith Nation the new government jobless claims shows the economy still needs help.
And so on the one hand, it shouldn't be terribly surprising because the pandemic is the cause of the downturn, but it can still be shocking. And so that's why it's all the more urgent that the president-elect and elected officials in Washington get to work soon on the next round of stimulus legislation.
Biden's plan also calls for $130 billion to help most schools reopen by spring. Many schools have already done so, and Virginia's Governor Ralph Northam says his state's data indicates that schools can open again with the proper safety standards. But the political outlook in Congress for Biden's plan remains unclear. Republicans are likely to object to certain parts of it, while some Democrats could say it doesn't go far enough. Ben Kennedy, CBN News.
Well, I'm concerned about the proposals I'm hearing, and my biggest concern is sending stimulus checks to people who have jobs. And if you're employed, do we really need to increase our national deficit? Are we creating future problems in some kind of vain effort to solve the current problem? But for those who are unemployed, those who are facing eviction, those who are facing foreclosure, let's do whatever we can to help them. I'm somewhat of an amateur photographer, and last night, of all things, I saw an eagle. And I wanted to show you that picture. Here's an eagle perched at the end of a pier. And that's the raw photo because I want you to see the colors in the water. And when you get close to it and you get the close-up shot, there is an eagle. She's facing left, or on her right, her feather's a little ruffled. But in the water is the red, white, and blue. And this photo really encouraged me. The Republic still stands. The flag still waves over the Capitol. We've had a great deal of turmoil. I fully anticipate there's going to be a great deal of turmoil and division in Congress, certainly over the next 100 days and probably over the next 4 years. But the republic still stands, and we should all be encouraged with that, and we should all pray for America, that somehow we can see a way through all the division and see our way to say we're one nation, and we're under God, and we're indivisible. There are a lot of different voices in the world today, in our country today, asking for more division, more strife. No, let us come together and realize our way of letting our voice be heard as in the ballot box. And there's another election, and it will happen in 2 years, and we get to have our voices heard then. In other news, 100 million vaccinations in his first 100 days. That's President-elect Biden's goal. Can it be achieved? Well, many states are already running into major problems because of the overwhelming demand for the shots. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. The rapid expansion of the vaccinations to senior citizens across the country has led to bottlenecks, system crashes, and other problems across several states. Look at this line of cars in Fresno, California Thursday, more than 2 miles long. People stood in line for hours at the Fresno, California Fairgrounds waiting for a shot. Also in Fresno, hundreds more moved ahead slowly in their cars for at least 2 hours at an orthopedic practice to get drive-through vaccinations.
I've been anxious waiting, because of the virus is so terrible, but I'll wait.
Similar problems are happening in other states like Arizona, New York, and more. The death toll from the virus is now approaching 400,000 here in the United States. Well, right here in Washington, President Trump's second impeachment trial could begin as soon as next Wednesday, the same day President-elect Joe Biden is set to be inaugurated, meaning the trial may start shortly after Biden takes the oath of office. Some Democrats are pushing for a delay to give Biden time to set up his administration. Voters are pretty much evenly split on whether Trump should be removed from office. An NBC News poll finds 50% say he should be removed, while 48% say he should not, within the margin of error. Trump could not actually be taken out of office since the trial will not end until he's already left the White House. Well, in just over 2 months, Israelis will head to the polls for the 4th time in 2 years. As CBN's Chris Mitchell explains from Jerusalem, this time significant changes on the political landscape could majorly affect the results.
The latest election cycle began in late December when Israel's parliament couldn't pass a budget. Failure to meet the deadline automatically triggered the new election, now scheduled for March 23rd. It also ends the 7-month-long contentious coalition led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and retired Chief of Staff Benny Gantz.
The way it looks like that, like the national camp, the right-wing party will get more support. Parties like the Labour Party, blue and white, I'm not sure we will see them in a few months. But within the right-wing parties, you have a split between those who support the prime minister and those who are not willing to cooperate with Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Middle East analyst Joel Rosenberg says the new election landscape poses a major challenge to Netanyahu and the Likud party because of challenges from the right.
Here's the key. More and more leaders of the smaller parties are saying they will never serve in a Netanyahu government. That is getting close to a critical mass. But if they can't build a coalition, because the leaders of almost every other party says they won't serve with Netanyahu, and he's got a huge problem on his hands.
Gideon Sa'ar is now Netanyahu's main challenger. Once a Likud party leader and the prime minister's cabinet secretary, he's moved to form his own party called New Hope.
So now there is a real full right Likud-type alternative. And that's a chink in the armor of Netanyahu, both because he left the party and because he's a legitimate leader, and because he said, and people believe him, he will not sit with Netanyahu.
Netanyahu is putting his campaign's hope on successfully leading Israel out of the COVID pandemic. Israel currently leads the world in vaccinations per capita, and Netanyahu seeks to reopen Israel in time for the March election and Passover. The coronavirus has hit Israel hard.
This is a very big issue, and Israel has never dealt with an economic crisis of this magnitude. So Israelis are very concerned. It affects everything, but they also feel that their leadership, their elected leadership, kind of abandoned them for personal reasons.
Other factors Israeli voters will likely consider include the Iranian threat, Netanyahu's upcoming corruption trial, and the potential impact of a Biden administration on issues like the Abraham Accords. Despite Netanyahu's challenges, Likud remains Israel's strongest political party. If Netanyahu can show significant progress against the coronavirus pandemic, expand the Abraham Accords, and keep Iran at bay, he could again confound experts who have his political obituary already written. The fractured political landscape, however, makes predicting this election's outcome extremely difficult. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Gordon, how do you see all these splintered factions, political factions, affecting Israel's security?
Well, it's been uncertain now. We've been in the uncertainty for over 2 years, and so the one thing that binds them all together is Israel's security. So I'm not concerned about that, but it is. It would be a political miracle for Netanyahu to actually win. There have been so many of the factions. If you think our politics is complicated, imagine 16 parties all competing for places in the Knesset and the parliament, and then trying to cobble together a governing faction from all those various groups. So Netanyahu has been trying. He's been essentially tied. The big news is that Benny Gantz is now out. There was a shared power agreement, and he was supposed to become prime minister. All that's out. If Netanyahu can get the vaccination to every Israeli, if they can make it through the pandemic, then he's got a real shot at winning. But who knows? Their politics is remarkably complicated, and we'll just keep you posted on the results when they come out. Terry?
Well, up next, this felon was locked away for life. His crime, a nonviolent drug offense, even though he didn't have any drugs. This victim of the 3 strikes law speaks out. Plus, this young man lost his job, lost his car, and his home. So how did he go from all of that to making 6 figures running his own business? Well, you'll have to see it to believe it. That's later on today's 700 Club.
Hi, folks. This is Pat Robertson, and I want to thank you for watching the 700 Club. Now, make sure to click the subscribe button below so you'll never miss an episode. The team at CBN always reads and responds to your comments and prayer requests, so keep them coming.
Monday, a civil rights hero.
They didn't cover nothing positive for black people hardly in those days.
And at 81, she's still fighting for justice.
Love and forgiveness is a moral excellence.
Her prayer for today.
Without faith, it is impossible to please God.
And her hope for tomorrow.
And God will bless us marvelously.
Next week on the 700 Club.
Stay connected with CBN News all day across our platforms.
Like being buried alive. That's how one federal inmate described his life sentence. He wasn't a murderer or a child molester. He was 28 years old and had never committed a violent crime. So how did he get locked up for life? Caitlin Burke explains.
Really like hell, like how they describe hell. Nobody can hear you screaming, hear your screams. That's really how it is. I mean, you hear people screaming all night. That's all I used to think about. We're in hell.
At the age of 28, a judge sentenced Herman Tate to life in prison without parole for a low-level, nonviolent drug offense.
Buried alive. Just imagine it. Putting you in a casket and you're alive. But you can stand up and walk around in it. That's what it is. You can't get out.
Tate's sentence fell under the federal 3 strikes drug law passed by Congress in the 1980s. It states that if someone is charged with a federal drug crime and already has 2 prior drug offenses, then that's the 3rd strike, and a federal prosecutor can require the judge to impose a mandatory life sentence. Tate's first strike came in 1992 for selling half a gram of crack. His sentence, 6 months probation. He gained his second strike 2 years later. That time, he sold 7.7 grams of cocaine. Sentenced to 5 years in prison, Tate was only required to serve 8 months. Then, in 1998, he struck out, charged with conspiracy to sell cocaine. Tate, however, had never heard of the 3 strikes drug law, and since no drugs were found in his possession, he chose to go to trial. The prosecutor filed what's known as an 851 notice.
That means that even if the judge wanted to take pity on you, even if the judge believed that you could be rehabilitated, even if the judge believed that the sentence was too harsh, that sheet of paper meant that you had to receive a mandatory life sentence without parole.
Life.
Wow.
For nothing.
Tate headed to federal prison, where it took 2 years for the gravity of his sentence to sink in.
I keep seeing people going home, and I'm like, man, and I realize, hey, I'm never going home. And it just hit me all of a sudden. And that's when I realized that I had a life sentence in the federal system.
The 3 strikes federal drug law covers all 50 states. Many states have gone further, expanding 3 strikes laws that impose mandatory life sentences for 3 convictions of certain felonies. In California, for example, the 1994 3 Strikes You're Out law was designed to keep murderers, rapists, and child molesters behind bars. Today, however, more than half sentenced under that law are serving life sentences for nonviolent crimes. Evidence that these 3 strikes laws can result in unintended consequences. My Angel Cody is an attorney and the director of the Decarceration Collective, a team of women fighting to free people sentenced to life in prison for drugs and end the policies that put them there. Many of her clients were teenagers or young adults when convicted with their 3rd strike. The mandatory life sentence that followed, basically erasing the possibility of maturation and growth, stamping them instead as irredeemable.
The most potent example of sort of the human spirit, right, is that we tell someone you're buried alive and you're never going to leave prison. And for the person to still have the audacity and the wherewithal to get up every day and to try to make some meaning of your life, I think is for me, it's deeply inspiring. It's why I do the work. It also is the most salient example of why we ought to go back and look at these different laws.
When Congress passed the Fair Sentencing Act in 2010, it provided the potential for a lower sentence, but did nothing for those already in prison. Then, in 2018, President Trump signed the First Step Act, which finally allowed the opportunity to reconsider prior sentences. In reading the new law, Tate regained a sense of hope for the first time in nearly 22 years.
And I'm like, oh, Lord, because it fit me. I fit the criteria.
Cody and her team officially requested his life sentence be reduced. In January of 2020, Tate learned of his freedom.
I'm just watching the TV, and my case manager come out and called my name, Tate. Took my earbuds out. I'm like, yeah, what's up? She's like, you need to come to my office right now. I'm like, oh. So I go over there, and she turns around with a big smile on her face. I'm like, what's wrong with you? She said, Tate, you going home. I just started crying. I said, don't play. She said, I'm for real. I said, don't lie to me. And that's when I found out.
Still, an estimated 800 inmates could likely die in prison under the 3 strikes drug law. A disproportionate number of them are Black.
There are all these places along the highway towards imprisonment where people get off, right? And then there are on-ramps. And what we've seen is that disproportionately, it's more difficult for African Americans to exit off of that highway, right? And that more of them are on that highway towards mass incarceration and imprisonment. Some of that relates to charging decisions that are made. Some of that relates to the rates of arrest. Some of it relates to community resources that are available.
No legislation reforming the federal 3 strikes drug law includes those sentenced to life for marijuana convictions.
But Cody believes change is coming.
I absolutely believe that transformative justice will occur. And the reason why is because I think that people are awake and paying attention.
Cody says now is the time for the American people to ask questions and put pressure on our elected officials. That's because voters can make a major impact at the ballot box and be the catalyst that keeps Cody's clients and many others from being buried alive behind bars. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
It was the call to get tough on crime, and it was an election call. A lot of it had to do with the crack epidemic of the 1980s. A lot of it had to do with the Willie Horton ad in the 1988 presidential race between Bush and Dukakis, where Lee Atwater put that ad in all of the swing states and was saturated. Here, Willie Horton had been released from Massachusetts on parole, and he killed someone. He raped and killed someone. So it was, you know, well, we have to get tough on crime. In the aftermath of that election, and then the Clinton win in 1992, in 1994, there was a federal criminal law that President-elect Biden was campaigning for that was very tough on crime and had lots of mandatory minimums. We've now seen in the decades since how disproportionately that is impacting the African-American community. I, for one, think we need to radically change this, where we're essentially putting people away for huge prison terms. And if you're African-American, aged 18 to 35, and you're male, 1/3 of them is somehow involved in the criminal justice system, either in jail or on parole or under arrest. I mean, you look at these statistics, and it's creating permanent underclass where people don't have an opportunity. They can't get jobs once they have these convictions, and they're living without hope. How can we change it? Well, you and I can petition our government for a redress of grievances. And one of that needs to be, can we please get rid of all of these laws? I've heard it said by a federal judge, you literally can't drive 500 miles in America without violating the law, which is absolutely incredible. The number of things that are on the books that we're literally not aware of, but then in these 3 strikes laws, and then on top of it, the whole judicial system is designed to get you to confess or designed to get you to plea bargain. And so the pressure is enormous, and if you don't accept the plea bargain, then the prosecution's going to ramp up and give you a much stiffer penalty because you're forcing them to work and go to a trial. All of these things need to be reformed. All of it needs a really good, hard look. And wouldn't it be wonderful for people to once again have hope in America, where we're not putting people away for life who have never committed a violent crime? That's a culture I want. That's a nation I want. And let's work together to make that happen. Terry?
Well, still ahead, you break it, he fixes it. Meet an electronics whiz who was the go-to person for fixing all sorts of gadgets. Now he's a thriving entrepreneur. What's the secret to his success? He's going to tell you himself. That's coming up. We want to hear your story. Send us a message or call us 1-800-700-7000.
He founded a global ministry, interviewed world leaders, was a leading presidential candidate, and he has walked with the living God. In Pat Robertson's latest book, discover the principles that guided this extraordinary life and how they can shape your future. When you become a CBN partner, we'll send you your copy of the highly acclaimed book, I Have Walked with the Living God. Call now.
Dennis Dixon has a way with electronics. He can fix just about anything. So when he lost his job, his car, and his home, Dennis had a choice to make. What was it, And how did it lead to what Dennis calls ridiculous favor? Take a look.
Dennis Dixon has been fascinated with electronics ever since childhood. It all started when his mother gave him a walkie-talkie.
I broke it on my birthday, and I was like, oh man, I can't tell her that I broke it. So I was like, I'm gonna try to fix it. And I didn't know how to fix it, but I opened it up and I saw the inside, and it just caught me. And I've always been interested with electronics since then.
Soon he became the go-to person for friends and family with broken electronics. His father began to notice his son's talent.
It was just like a hobby, like any other hobby. And he saw me doing it, and he was like, you know, you could do something with this. So he was like, let's post an ad and see what happens. And the phone just kept ringing. People kept calling, and I'd fix one phone, then two phones, then they would tell their friends.
Dennis felt God prompting him to open a full-time business, but took a job in sales instead and fixed phones for extra money. His dad taught him the importance of tithing on his income.
Tithing is you trusting God with what he's given you and honoring him, you know, 10% of the 100% that he gives us every day. Setting aside money for God, for his kingdom and for his purpose, and learning how to trust God with your fears, with everything you have, including finances.
That trust was put to the test when the large electronics store he worked for went bankrupt. Dennis and his mother lost their jobs at the same time. Soon after, they lost their car and then their house.
And I think from that moment, I realized that faith wasn't just a feeling, but it was a reaction. Like, how am I going to choose to respond to this? Am I going to panic, or am I going to continue to trust God? And I chose to continue to trust God. I chose to continue tithing, believing that he was going to take care of us. And I would actually go above and give offerings, just believing for God to, you know, do a miracle. I wasn't going to allow my circumstances to destroy my faith.
Dennis remembered God's prompting to start his business full-time, but didn't think he was ready.
My response was, if that's what you want from me, make it to where that's the only option I have.
While out looking for a job, Dennis noticed a retail space for rent. When he spoke with the owner, she offered him a lease that gave him free rent for several months for his fix-it-shop idea.
Man, I mean, it's all laid out for me, and I just chose to do what God had been telling me to do the whole time. Like he opened the door.
Soon, his fix-it business was up and thriving.
Since I've been tithing, I've just seen like a ridiculous favor that just doesn't make sense. I would just see God provide in ways that I know that in my wisdom or in my knowledge, I couldn't have made happen by myself. It's just favor.
Dennis tithes to his church and also became a CBN partner.
I count it an honor to be able to support an organization that is spreading the love of God to people in places that I can't necessarily be at as a business owner. They're on the front lines of ministry, meeting the needs of people all across the world, and that's a privilege to me.
His business continues to grow and bless him beyond what he ever thought possible.
God restored everything we lost, and then some, 100-fold. Like, I never would have thought that I'd end up here running my own company, making 6 figures. Every day it's a blessing, and I'm just grateful and thankful for it.
Every day is a blessing. Don't you just love Dennis? Don't you love what God has done with him? How he's inspired him, how he's taken him along the way, and how he's proved himself true. And that's what God loves to do. He loves to watch over his word to perform it. His eyes are going to and fro over the whole earth to show himself strong to those whose hearts are loyal to him. And Dennis proved it. He said, okay, God, I'll take you at your word. I'll do it your way. Here he is, he's working hard, he loses his job, then he loses his car, then he loses his home. And now what do? It would be a perfect time to complain to God. It would be a perfect time to sort of say, well, I just give up. Everything seems to be against me. But no, he took a risk. God challenged him and then made a way open for him to open his own business. And that entrepreneurial spirit just rose up in him, and you see what happened. Now, here's a verse for you. You need to claim this verse. It's from Deuteronomy chapter 28. All these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you because you obey the voice of the Lord your God. When you see it in his word, when you hear it, when you get that prompting, and you say, yes, God, I'll do it your way, that's when the blessings come. This isn't some on-again, off-again thing where, for the next 5 days, I'll be obedient to God. No, when you have a lifestyle, a lifetime obedience, that's when the blessings overtake you. You've seen it in Dennis. It can happen to you if you just resolve to do the same thing. So let this 2021, let the start of this year be the time where you say, okay, God, I'm all in with you. I want to do it your way. If you want to start a lifetime of tithing, if you want to be a part of everything CBN is doing, if you want to see the gospel preached around the world, if you want to see people right here in America get food, disaster relief, if you want to be a part of Orphans Promise, Operation Blessing, helping the home front, it's very simple. Join the 700 Club. How do you do it? Well, you pick up the phone, you call us, 1-800-700-7000, and say, you can count on me. Here's my pledge. It's $20 a month. That breaks out to 65 cents a day. Some of you can join at higher levels. We have 700 Club Gold at $40 a month. 1,000 Club, $1,000 a year. That breaks out to $84 a month. Now, when you call and join, I've got something for you. When you make your pledge, we'll send this to you. I Have Walked with a Living God, my father's latest book, where he gives an honest account of how God has been with him, his mistakes, his successes, how he listens to the voice of God, his prayer life, everything that has led to everything you see, where all he did was amen God. God would tell him to do things. He would amen God. And you see the blessings that come from that. It'll teach you how you can do it. I want you to have it. It's yours when you join. 1-800-700-7000. Terry?
Well, Tim and Juanita are raising their 5 grandchildren alone. 5. It hasn't been easy. Not long ago, the cupboards were empty, the fridge was bare. But today, this couple has more than enough to feed their family, and it's thanks to viewers like you.
Naya Garcia and her siblings are being raised by their grandparents.
When I talk about my grandparents, I take them as my real parents. They've had that place in my heart for as long as I can remember. They've just always been there for me. They showed me that they loved me because they didn't give up.
Naya's grandparents, Tim and Juanita, both work to support themselves and their 5 grandchildren.
I love my grandkids, and I wanted to keep our family together. They were in a situation where I had to step in and take care of them, and I did.
My grandkids are a godsend. They're a blessing because they have helped me grow in my faith, helped me grow as a man. They've helped me grow in love. I grew up in foster care, and I didn't have a family. They're everything to me.
Even with a dual income, sometimes their paychecks didn't stretch far enough to cover all the bills and pay for groceries.
There is a lot of challenges that goes with having a big family and not being able to feed them.
There were times when we didn't have anything on the table. We had the refrigerator, but the light was off. The cupboards were bare. That's frustrating when you have a family. You feel like a failure.
Then they started getting groceries from Dayspring Church, a partner of Operation Blessing.
It's just completely changed our lives. I'm not worried my kids are not going to eat. It's much easier now for us.
It's been a blessing. It put a smile on my wife's face. She would go in there and cook the food that we had. She would feed the kids, and they would sit there and we would talk and laugh. It made everything all right. God has been good to us through Operation Blessing.
Now Tim has a higher paying job, and he and Juanita rarely need help with food. They say they're thankful to the Operation Blessing partners who provided for their family when they needed it most.
I just want to say a big thank you because it makes such a big impact, and it may seem like a small thing, but it helps so greatly. We're very grateful.
Thank you for being God's hand on earth. Here in Texas, here in Grand Prairie, you have been Jesus' face right here. And I know because he's allowed me to witness it firsthand. Fed my family when we didn't have anything. Right when I wanted to give up, we wanted to give up, you were there.
That, my friends, is what you and I are supposed to be doing as followers of Jesus. And we need to reach out in every way. You know, when you see a family that is working hard and taking on a commitment and a responsibility like Tim and Juanita are, we need to stand with them. This is one family in one church center and outreach in Texas. 700 Club members, you're causing this to happen in centers like this all across the country for people who are just struggling at this time, and there are lots of us who are. Just want to say thank you if you're a 700 Club member. Want to ask you today if you'll renew your membership with us for this coming year. Want to ask those of you who haven't joined yet to join, because there are so many people in need and we can make a difference, especially when we all link arms together. So our number is toll free. It's 1-800-700-7000. Will you call right now and join? 65 cents a day, $20 a month makes you a 700 Club member. If you're already in the general membership level, go up to 700 Club Gold. That's a gift of $40 a month. You can see there are many options there. The 1,000 Club members join us at $84 a month, or you could become a 2,500 Club member at $209 a month. You see the founders down there, that's $417 a month. That works out to $5,000 a year. Ask God what he'd have you to do. And then I want you to know that the moment you make that phone call, your gift is being put right into the lives of people like Tim and Juanita who are in need. We want to say thank you for your heart for others. You're not only going to receive Pat's I Have Walked with the Living God book when you call and join today, but if you do it using Pledge Express, that's electronic monthly giving. It means your bank does all the work. It's pretty wonderful. You don't have to even think about it. You can stop it whenever you want, but it saves us some administrative costs so we can put even more of your gift right into the lives of families in need. So when you call, say, I want to join the 700 Club, tell us what level, and say, I'd like to do it using Pledge Express, and then we want to send you Power for Life teachings as a thank you. You'll get one of these every month, and we think they'll be a blessing to you. Well, when you become a CBN partner, we want you to know you'll also receive instant access to the audio version of I've Walked with the Living God. That's read by actor Kevin Sorbo. So you can listen at home or on the go on your computer, your phone, your smart TV, or your favorite device by using the CBN Family app. So activate your streaming link when you join as a CBN partner today. We appreciate that. Gordon?
Well, when her husband deployed, Megan was left to man the home front by herself. With 3 children at home, she was forced to quit her job. Megan worried about the added financial stress until CBN gave her entire family a major hand up.
Air Force Tech Sergeant Ian has deployed for 6 months multiple times. It's never easy on his family, but now he deploys for a year. Megan must shoulder the responsibilities of both mom and dad while he's gone.
I know that she can do it. She actually is the perfect military spouse. I have no doubt if there's an issue, and we have a good network of friends, family she can call, and she's taken care of.
I know that that lifts the burden off of him to be able to leave, knowing that I have it taken care of.
To prepare for this year's separation, they decided Megan should leave her part-time job at a grocery store to be at home full-time with the boys. The $5,000 cut to their budget will be missed, but necessary.
If somebody got sick or the school closed down or we had to go remote, I would have to call in and say I couldn't be there. So I was hanging on to something that was going to end up being, I was going to have to quit anyways.
At the halfway point, Ian is allowed 3 weeks of leave. However, the family is responsible for the cost of the flight home.
If it puts us in a financial bind, we won't put ourselves in that situation.
Despite the financial and emotional challenges this year may bring, they know God will see them through.
My faith and my prayers will absolutely play a huge role in getting through.
Near Ian's duty station at Seymour Johnson Joint Military Base, North Carolina, is their church home, the Lord's Table. The church asked Helping the Homefront to get involved. Pastor Ken Jefferson told the couple CBN was offsetting their loss of income that Megan brought in from her part-time job.
No way.
Serious? I ain't good. I ain't crying.
Wow.
So that's just the beginning. Helping the Homefront and their partners want to make sure that it isn't money that keeps you apart for a year. And so they're going to cover your ticket home at your midway point. Make sure that you're able to come home, spend some time with your family.
It really is amazing, because we really would not have had him come home if we couldn't do it. So that's amazing, because that's the best gift that we could have.
The first week of January 2021, Ian shipped out. This family is now looking forward to his visit home this summer.
Thank you to the CBN partners for this incredible blessing. I don't think a thank you is even enough.
It's great. It's awesome. I don't even know what to say. Thank you, everyone on the team.
If you're a member of the 700 Club, that thank you goes to you. You're helping our active duty military families. That's why we call it Helping the Homefront. So often we don't recognize that the whole family is serving. When a parent, when a spouse is in the military, they're months apart, there are multiple tours, and the whole family is serving. And oftentimes, and this is sort of an untold story, there's a lot more month than there is money. So how can you and I come in and help them and say, we recognize your service and we want to help you. We want to be there for you to let you know how much we appreciate what you're doing. You can do that by joining the 700 Club. If you're already a 700 Club member, would you consider increasing this year? Consider going to 700 Club Gold or to 1000 Club. Either way, when you call, make sure you ask for Pledge Express. That's electronic monthly giving, the bank doing all the work, and we can send as our gift to you, Power for Life. Now, when you join the 700 Club, we have a gift for you. It's my father's latest book, I Have Walked with the Living God. Here's a sample of what's inside.
Hi, this is Pat Robertson with an excerpt from my new book, I Have Walked with the Living God, read by actor Kevin Sorbo. I hope it will be a blessing to you as you walk with God.
If you can take one thing away from this book, it is this: get rid of the clutter in your life. Stop doing non-essential things and stop thinking you are accomplishing something just because you are engaged in a whirl of activities. Instead, spend your time in the presence of the Lord. By prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus.
Get your copy today when you become a CBN partner. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com.
Do you want to know more about having a relationship with God? Call us at 1-800-700-7000.
Welcome back to Washington for this CBN News Break. A strong, shallow earthquake shook Indonesia's Sulawesi Island today, knocking over buildings, triggering landslides, and killing at least 34 people. More than 500 people were injured during the magnitude 6.2 quake, which sent people fleeing from their homes in darkness. Authorities have been collecting information about the full scale of the casualties and damage. There were reports of many people trapped in the rubble of collapsed homes and buildings. Well, CBN's Operation Blessing is sending aid to refugees of the humanitarian crisis in Armenia. Last year's conflict over disputed land forced Armenians to flee from their villages. Now they're living in unfamiliar lands, struggling to find shelter, food, and basic hygiene necessities. But thanks to Operation Blessing's generous partners, refugee families receive care packages full of critical supplies, including enough food to last a family of 4 to 6 people for 2 to 3 weeks. The bundles also had basic hygiene products to help the families as they strive for stability in their difficult situations. Well, you can find out more about Operation Blessing by visiting ob.org. Gordon and Terry will be back with more of the 700 Club right after this.
Hi, this is Pat Robertson. We don't know what the future holds for different tech companies, but we always want to be able to share the good news through the media. So I want to invite you to watch our program on cbnfamily.com or download the CBN Family app. This way you can have direct access to the 700 Club and other specials from CBN, and you won't miss a thing. Now just click below to get more details and watch with us.
Khalil saw his life flash before his eyes. As the scenes replayed in his mind, Khalil caught a glimpse of something else, and that wound up saving his life.
I felt lost. I felt out of control, and I had no way of stopping what I was doing. I didn't grow up in a super religious household. My parents, wanted me to find my own path. I always wanted a connection with God. I was asking about angels, and so I was always hungry for God. I didn't think that he was a personal God at all. I would pray for him to get me out of trouble. I would pray for, a girl to like me. I would ask him for things, selfish things. The first time I tried alcohol, I was in about 6th grade, and I remember the feeling that alcohol gave me, and it was kind of like this peace that I was looking for. And then it went into high school with marijuana. I tried other drugs as well. It hurt, my parents that I was abusing substances. I would drive drunk. I was trying to numb this void I had in my life, this lack of connection that I was looking for. One night I mixed drugs. I felt like I was dying in the hotel room. Everything else zoned out, and all I was aware of was the presence of God. The awareness that I had in that moment was that every breath that I was breathing was given to me from God, that at any moment he could just stop what he was doing and I would have died. I came out of that experience. I was promising to God that I would never do that again, that I would never do drugs again. And of course, I couldn't fulfill that promise. I actually couldn't fulfill any promises that I made. I lived a very inconsistent life. After high school, I went to art college and was dating a girl at the time, and she got me a Bible. Eventually, I decided to go to church. I would sit in the pew, and the message would completely go over my head. I was trying to stop doing what I was doing in alcohol and drugs. I was trying to stop, and I couldn't. I remember one night I was just so desperate. I really didn't want to drink. I ended up buying a case of beer and drinking. And I was just so upset with myself. I was so disappointed that I couldn't stop drinking. I couldn't stop going to this substance. I couldn't stop trying to fill this void. And I remember sitting on the side of the street in Philadelphia, and a group of my friends actually were walking down the street. They came up to me, they said, hey, you want to party? And I was just so broken. I just sat there and I said, no, I don't want to party. I was kind of left by myself on the side of the road, desperate for change. And I cried out to God. I said, God, if you're real, show me who you are. And I saw in front of my eyes all these scenes from my life. And every scene from my life was God showing me the times in my life where he showed himself real. And in that moment, I knew that God was speaking to me about how he was throughout my entire life revealing himself to me in different circumstances, in different situations. All the scenes ended, my life flashed before my eyes, and then I saw outer space, I saw the stars, and in the stars I saw the cross. Now, before that, I had no idea that Jesus was God. I was reading all kinds of New Age material. I felt like God was showing me something, but I still didn't know what to believe. God was trying to show me something, and the cross was a hint. I left art college. The week I came home, I went to a week-long evangelistic crusade. The evangelist was speaking, and I felt like he was speaking right to my heart, where everything else zoned out, and it was just me and God again. And he spoke to me, and he said, if you decide to follow me, you're going to lose all your friends. Your life is going to be completely new. It's going to be completely changed. I said, God, this is all I need. All I need is to know that you're real, and I'm giving my life to you. And I gave my life to Jesus that night. I asked my family for forgiveness. My work ethic changed. I remember my ex-girlfriend's dad saying this to me. He said, you know, you could actually give your life to becoming a pastor. And as soon as he said that, I knew in that moment that this is what my life is about. 20 years of searching, and I knew exactly what I was called to do. I got in touch with a small church in New Jersey and got ordained in and helped lead worship. And about 10 years later, I met my wife, and now we live in New York City. We do ministry together. I'm living my best life, my greatest joy, to see people come alive in God and know who God called them to be and come alive in their identities. So I'm forever grateful for what Christ did for me, and it's an adventure every day. The kindness of God, you know, leads you to repentance. I have been changed from the kindness of Jesus. And I've never met someone so kind, someone so loving, someone so gentle. Every encounter you have with God is an encounter with the kindest, most gentle, loving being in the entire universe. The Creator is the heart of pure love, pure kindness, pure gentleness. You will not regret going after God. The Bible says that if you seek Him, you'll find Him. So go after Him with all your heart, and you will not regret it.
The kindness of God leads to repentance. You know, a lot of us grow up in church, kind of doing the church thing, and we have head knowledge about God, head knowledge about Jesus. You know, we know Jesus is supposed to be the Son of God. We know that He died on the cross, but we don't really connect with, what does that mean to me? You know, Jesus died on the cross to forgive your sins, and mine, and everyone's who will accept that gift. It's a free gift. It's available to all. He didn't die just to die. It was for you specifically, not something that happened 2,000 years ago that's just a history moment. It's your freedom today. And so for all those years that Khalil spent trying to figure out how to get rid of things he knew needed to be gone in his life, how to find fulfillment and wholeness, looking in relationships and jobs and in crowds that he hung out with, he couldn't find it because we start out life alone with God, and in the end, we come back to God alone. And in the middle, we are meant to be in relationship with Him. And it starts with understanding what happened on that cross 2,000 years ago. It's really when your life and mine began, when God gives us the opportunity to say yes to Him, to give Him our lives, to have our sin forgiven, to be filled with the power and the presence of the living God so that we live differently. It's yours for the asking. It's yours right now for the asking. You know, we have a toll-free number. We talk to you about it throughout the show, but one of the things you can do when you call that toll-free number is pray with somebody. It's 1-800-700-7000, no money involved. Just call and say, would you pray with me? I want to know what it's like to walk with God. I want to leave you with these words from 2 Peter. May God give you more and more grace and peace as you grow in your knowledge of God and Jesus our Lord. Thanks for being with us today. God bless you.
Hello, this is Pat Robertson. As I look back over my 90 years, I see a life of ongoing excitement filled with loving God and seeing His power at work. I've written a book called I Have Walked with the Living God, telling about the wonderful things that have happened to me. It's my hope that it will lead you to a deeper understanding of God and inspire you to set a course to serve Him.
In Pat's dynamic latest book, you'll learn how to receive favor, wisdom, and discernment, how to overcome obstacles, and live a life that is exhilarating and full of promise.
I believe this book will help you step into your future, ready to trust God and receive His blessings in your life. Nothing can compare to a life lived for God's glory and purpose.
Call now or go to cbn.com to receive your copy today.